writing equations. If you haven't already, I want for you to pause this video and kind of copy down these key words and phrases that mean addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, powers, and equals. So again, take a second to copy these down so that you can refer back to them when you're writing out those equations. So if we look at writing equations, you're going to use that keywords image that I just showed you to recognize words or phrases that you need to look for in word problems in order to be able to write them as equations. This is what we call the verbal form, and we're going to write the algebraic form, so numbers and variables. So let's take a look here. Let's look for words and phrases. It says a number times 3. We know that times means to multiply. Is equal to means equals. So when we write out our equations, we always write them how we read left to right. So a number times 3, we don't know what that number is, so I'm just going to use the letter n. So I have that number times 3 is equal to 90. Now sometimes it will ask you to solve. In that case, you would just do opposite operations or undoing them in order to get the value of that variable. But for this one, we're just going to practice writing the expression or the equation themselves. So if we look at example 2, it says 4 more than 5 times a number is 14. So some words and phrases is your equal sign. 5 times a number would be written as 5n because times means to multiply them. And then we have 4 more than. More means to add, and since we have this double arrow, that means these two terms that you're adding together have to be flipped because you're really going to be adding 4 to this value. So in this case, as I read it left to right, I have to remember to switch those two terms. So I'm going to start with my 5n. I'm going to add 4 to it, and that's going to equal 14. So when I look at this back, I have 4 more than 5 times a number is 14. If we move down to example 3, I have $10 was 2/3 of the total money. So $10 was, that's my equal sign. So this is equal to 2/3 of the total money. 2/3 I'm going to write as a fraction. Of means to multiply, and the total money. We don't know what the total money is, so I'm going to use the letter M for money to represent that value. So again, as I write it left to right, I have $10 equals 2/3 times M. You could also write this as 10 is equal to 2m divided by 3. This fraction and this expression mean the same thing. You can also just write it as 10 equals 2/3 with your m touching that fraction. Remember, if we have a coefficient in front of our variable, it automatically means to multiply those two pieces together. Example 4, it says 5 less than a number is 18. So again, less than means to subtract, but because we have this word than, like we did up in example 2, we have to remember to flip or swap those two terms. So I have 5 less than a number. I don't know what that is, so I'm going to put an n. Is means your equal sign. So again, when I write this left to right, I need to remember to swap my a number term and the 5. So n minus 5 is going to equal 18. And the last example, example 5, says volume of a rectangle is equal to length times width times height. So again, my is my equal sign. I have times is multiply, times is multiply. In this case, I have 4 pieces that I don't know. I don't know my volume, so I'm going to use big V. I don't know my length, so I'm going to use a little l. I don't know my width, so I'm going to use a small w, and I don't know my height, so I'm going to use a little h. So in this case, you're not going to have any numbers, you're just going to have letters or variables. So again, as I read left to right, I have volume equals my length times my width times my height. The other way we can write this is simply volume is equal to LWH. Again, if I have a bunch of variables and numbers just touching each other, that automatically means to multiply them. These are what we call literal equations, which basically just means that they have more than one variable as part of the equation itself.